The busy holiday shopping season wasn't all that busy at some Macy's retail stores. Sales were down 2% year to year. And now Macy's is the one looking to save. The well-known retailer announced another 68 stores of the 100 it will close around the country. It means cutting more than 10,000 jobs. And on the list is this store at Simi Valley Town Center.
That is so sad because this is my favorite store.
Shoppers like Martha Hoagland aren't happy, but she admits it's not exactly busy in there.
This side is mostly quiet.
This side for men, children, and home furnishings will close sometime this year. 105 people will get transferred or lose their jobs. The other side for women will stay open. Macy's in North Hollywood already closed. It's all a sign of Macy's financial struggles.
They have no clear strategy. Who goes to Macy's? It's not clear anymore.
USC Marshall School of Business professor Kyle Mayer says Macy's is stuck in the middle. Not high-end enough, not cheap enough, and not convenient enough to compete with Amazon and all that online shopping.
As Amazon tries to make delivery times shorter and shorter and shorter, which makes online more and more appealing, that's just going to exacerbate the trend that we're seeing right now.
In a press release, Macy's CEO said in part, "Our plan to close approximately 100 stores over the next few years is an important part of our strategy to help us right-size our physical footprint as we expand our digital reach."
The cost of minimum wage hikes. 19 states, including Colorado, California, Connecticut, increasing their minimum wages at the start of the new year. And our next guest warns more cities may do the same in a Wall Street Journal op-ed called "The Fight for 15." Coming to a city hall near you. What is it doing to restaurants in those places where we've seen it so far?
Well, what it's doing is creating a tremendous amount of hardship, and it's actually leaving quite a bit of carnage in its wake. We see now over 30 cities and municipalities have their own local minimum wage requirements. Some in California as high as $13 an hour right now. You compare that to the historical minimum wage standard of about $7.40. So it's quite high, and what we're seeing is customers aren't necessarily willing to pay for it. Even in wealthier markets, like in the Bay Area, where I think people assumed that a higher minimum wage was more palatable. At the end of the year, some newspapers have described it as a death march. There have been so many restaurant closures out there. And so I think what some business owners are able to do is adapt and do things like automate. But for other business owners, especially the smaller guys, what it means is that their business model just doesn't work anymore.
Selfie drones already exist, but 00 Robotics says its new hover camera Passport is the best of its kind. Image recognition software allows the drone's camera to spot its owner and search for them.
This is actually a flying robot. It's a flying piece of artificial intelligence.
It's one of thousands of new products on display at the world's biggest tech event, CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Tech shows aren't complete without personal robots, like Curry from Mayfield Robotics.
This is Curry. She's very busy. Curry, technically genderless, but I'll use female pronouns, is made by Mayfield Robotics, and she's making her debut at CES 2017.
We're focused on figuring out how home robots are going to evolve and become part of everyday life for a lot of people.
She's being marketed as a home robot, a kind of robotic sidekick that can help out around the house, but not like a vacuum cleaner.
Part entertainment, some of that companionship, some of the fun, the music, and part utility, like checking in when you're not home and making sure everything's okay.
He knows what the layout of your house is. He knows where he is. He also can do things like look at a face and recognize it.
She can be an alarm, like remind you to take something out of the oven, or also play a podcast when you're getting ready for work. And she can also read audiobooks to your kid and kind of help put them to sleep.
Meet Sota. He's more than an interactive robot. He's also a drinking buddy at this izakaya restaurant in Tokyo. Japan has a real love for robots, and they're becoming an integral part of daily life in Japan.
Robots are often pictured as heroes in Japanese anime and literature, and there's almost an affection for humanoid bots. Now, people are developing their ability to think, or AI, as an effective solution to the country's shrinking and aging population, and it's paving the way for a robotics revolution here in Japan.
Modern research has succeeded in developing robots with a more human touch. Teenager Asuna is one such bot created by A-Lab, a front-runner in Android manufacturing. Researchers believe such androids could help people reduce their workload or even help them open up hearts.
For example, in the case of autism, kids never open mind or any person. But if we put Android in front of the kids, he is very interested in to talk with Android.
Major tech and auto companies are also capitalizing on the industry, especially since Tokyo recently laid out the Robot Revolution initiative to quadruple the robotics sector to $20 billion by 2020.
Now, in the digital age, many people are permanently glued to smartphones. But could our devices help in the event of emergency? Well, the creators of a new app certainly hope so.
Swipe to find out how to make a tourniquet or treat a burn. A new app launched by senior British military and civilian medics aims to tackle one of the big problems following a terrorist attack: time. The creators are concerned that people caught up in an attack may not be clear on how to respond in the immediate aftermath, when every second counts.
We won't be able to save everybody with citizen aid. Some people will be too seriously injured. But what we can do by empowering the public with simple skills and knowledge is prevent avoidable deaths.
Last year in London, police and emergency services carried out a training exercise simulating a terrorist attack. But now the public are being encouraged to undertake digital training of their own.
Now, here's one of the most amazing new technological inventions you maybe thought you'd never see: a flying ambulance in the Holy Land. This robotically remotely piloted drone is called the Cormorant, and it can speed through the clouds at 115 miles per hour. The aircraft is capable of carrying up to 1,100 pounds, which makes it ideal for extricating civilians from critical situations such as warfare or the explosion of dirty bombs and toxic chemicals. Military or emergency personnel could be simultaneously transported in to deal with dangerous situations. Because it's made with internal rotary blades rather than outer propellers like helicopters, the Cormorant can zoom in and out of urban areas without hitting power lines. The Israeli Urban Aeronautics Company has been developing the $14 million 1.5-ton UAV for 15 years and is hoping its airborne ambulance will take to the skies by 2020.
It seems that United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334 isn't the only way that the UN has been recently subverting the image of Israel. An ongoing Israeli investigation into United Nations-run schools in the West Bank has revealed that the materials used to teach Palestinian students continues to consistently delegitimize and demonize the Jewish state. The textbooks are written by the Palestinian Ministry of Education and are used by UN Relief and Works Agency schools in all the Palestinian territories of the West Bank and Gaza. They systematically distort the history of the Middle East and remove all mention of Jewish religious and historical ties to the Holy Land. Palestine is superimposed over the entirety of Israel on all maps. Names of cities like Tel Aviv and other entirely Israeli cities are renamed, and historical events or photos are manipulated and/or photoshopped to overwrite Israel's existence or make Jews out to be the aggressors. The most disturbing discovery with respect to the future of peace in the region, however, is how the UN-sanctioned schools do not teach Palestinian students to recognize Israel as a country, regardless of her borders, 1948 or otherwise. Israel has continuously fought against the use of UN-owned establishments like schools and hospitals from being used as weapons storehouses, launch points, incitement centers, and worse.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, and Nevada Senator Dean Heller brought their Jerusalem Embassy and Recognition Act to Congress on Tuesday. The measure is very similar to a resolution from 1995 led by former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who also happens to be a current Trump confidant. The move to relocate the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem was dismissed by then-President Bill Clinton, and it has continued to be nixed by his two successors, who have repeatedly used their prerogative to delay implementation of a congressional demand. Now it looks like that may change, especially since Trump selected David Friedman to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, who has long been a vocal supporter of Israeli settlements and Israel's right to Jerusalem as its eternal capital. Reports indicate that Trump's advisors are already in the process of planning the relocation of the embassy. but Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas doesn't seem to think that a move will play out. Abbas claims it would have irreversible consequences and is warning that the PLO will revoke its recognition of Israel should a relocation take place. The Palestinians claim any hope of Israeli-Palestinian peace will be gone if Trump follows through with his promise.
علينا أن نستعد للمواجهة الجديدة القادمة مع إدارة أمريكية جديدة تعلن بشكل صارخ ووقح بأن إسرائيل والاستيطان يعني شرعي وقانوني، وبعث وفد يعني لنقل سفارته من تل أبيب إلى القدس. أعتقد بأنه أي حماقة أمريكية ستؤدي إلى اشتعال الأراضي الفلسطينية، وتتحمل الإدارة الأمريكية والغطرسة الإسرائيلية في استمرار الاستيطان تتحمل مسؤولية إعادة إراقة الدماء على الأراضي الفلسطينية.
Well, Russia is seeking to stage naval drills with the Philippines following President Rodrigo Duterte's decision to downgrade his country's ties with the United States. 2 warships from Russia's Pacific Fleet docked in Manila on Tuesday for a 4-day visit with the goal of taking part in potential bilateral Navy drills. The drills are expected to include showing off weapons and tactics. This as Manila said it was considering Moscow's offer to sell a submarine and drones to the Philippines to develop the military's modernization program. Last October, Duterte's expressed desire to forge stronger defense and economic alliance with Russia and China. Now, the president has time and again threatened to scale back U.S. troop presence in the Philippines.
Around 100 armed men with links to Muslim rebels have stormed a prison in the southern Philippine city of Kidapawan, killing a guard and freeing more than 150 prisoners, some of them Islamic militants. The leader of the attackers had links with the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, a splinter group of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Now, according to Philippine authorities, 8 escapees have since been caught, with 2 having surrendered and 6 more having been killed by security forces.
Turkey has warned the new round of Syria peace talks is at risk. Ankara accused Syrian government forces of violating a fragile truce it brokered with Russia last week. Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu urged Syrian government and its backers to end their, quote, violations of the truce. He warned they were jeopardizing this month's planned talks in the Kazakh capital, Astana. However, fighting continued on the ground in the Wadi Barada region near Damascus on Wednesday. The nationwide ceasefire has brought calm to large parts of Syria, but has been threatened by the ongoing fighting in Wadi Barada.
To the commuter train crash right here in New York City. An arriving train did not stop crashing into the wall. More than 100 people were hurt, many of them thrown inside the train.
Tonight, chaos for commuters after this rush hour train crashed into this New York City station. Emergency responders navigating dazed passengers and broken glass to get to the injured inside. The Long Island Railroad commuter train was carrying 430 people when just after 8 a.m. it smashed into a bumper block at the end of the terminal, causing the front car of the train to derail.
It was going faster than normal.
The force of the impact throwing passengers to the ground.
People who were standing went flying. Thankfully, I was still seated. I just got thrown against the seat in front of me. Bags went flying.
Leaving more than 100 people hurt.
You can see the road here in front of Atlantic Terminal shut down. Emergency responders using this area as a triage to treat those injured before taking them to the hospital.
Some of the wounded carried away on gurneys into dozens of waiting ambulances. Fortunately, all of those injuries were minor, but it was an all too close call. The accident happening just months after a train in Hoboken, New Jersey jumped over the bumper block at the terminal. One woman died.
This is minor compared to what happened in Hoboken. But the same question, why did the operator not stop the train before it hit the block?
New members of the 115th Congress have been sworn into office. Now the Republican-led House and Senate are ready to tackle much of President-elect Donald Trump's agenda, including repealing and replacing Obamacare. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is reportedly moving closer to choosing a Supreme Court nominee.
So help you God. After being sworn into office, it's time for the 115th Congress, led by Republicans, to get down to business. And at the top of their list, repealing Obamacare, one of President-elect Trump's key campaign promises. Vice President-elect Mike Pence will meet with the House GOP to discuss Obamacare.
We'll focus on repealing and replacing Obamacare. We'll look forward to legislation that will give us the tools to roll back the avalanche of red tape and regulation that have been stifling American jobs and growth.
Even so, Democrats plan to put up a fight, and President Obama heads to Capitol Hill today to talk with congressional Democrats about protecting Obamacare. But Senate Republicans quickly moved Tuesday to get things started by introducing a budget resolution that will allow them to repeal Obamacare through a simple majority vote, something the Democrats cannot stop. The Senate will also be involved in another major action by the incoming president, voting on his choice for a Supreme Court justice to replace the late Antonin Scalia. Politico reports that the president-elect is closer to picking a nominee, narrowing down his list to around 6 finalists. When he takes office, Trump's goal is to make that appointment one of the first things he does, according to several members of the transition team.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting Trump and his top advisors are working on a plan that would restructure the CIA, according to unnamed sources familiar with the planning. The source said the plan is to cut back on staff at the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, in favor of more people in the field. The report pointed to Trump's accusation that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has become politicized. Trump has been highly critical of the CIA, FBI, and other agencies since his election, saying their claims Russia intervened to help him win the presidency are just an attempt to discredit his surprise victory.
The 115th Congress has just been sworn in, and while Republicans still maintain control of both the House and the Senate, there's something else that's been maintained from the last Congress and many before. According to the annual Pew Forum's Faith on the Hill survey, despite an electorate that's becoming less religious, Congress is still quite faithful, with nearly the same percentage of members who identify as Christian today as there were in the 1960s.
The key takeaway is that the big majority of members of Congress continue to identify themselves as Christians. In fact, 485 of the 535 members of the new Congress describe themselves as Christians, Protestants or Catholics or Mormons. There are 30 Jewish members of the new Congress, there are 3 Buddhists, there are 3 Hindus, there are 2 Muslim members of the new Congress, and just 1 member of the new Congress who describes themselves as religiously unaffiliated, as having no religious preference at all.
And that's very interesting because that number in the general public is about, 20% or 15%, isn't that right?
Yeah, it's amazing. If you look back over time, the percentage of adults in the general population who say they have no religion, who identify themselves as atheist or agnostic or as just nothing in particular when it comes to religion, that group is growing very rapidly. In fact, today, as many as 23% of all adults in the United States say they have no religion. Compare that to Congress, where just 1 person, just 0.2% say the same. That's a really striking comparison.
The smell of marijuana may fill the air when Donald Trump takes his oath as president. Pot activists plan to pass out free joints a few hours before the inauguration, and then they'll march on the National Mall to demand federal legalization of recreational marijuana use. Currently, pot is being legalized solely on a state-by-state basis. Users will be encouraged to light up about 4 minutes into Trump's inaugural address.
Researchers uncovered a gene mutation that allows bacteria to tolerate normally effective antibiotic therapy in a 6-week-old infant. Doctors at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital were treating a patient with leukemia when the infant developed an infection called VRE. Researchers conducted an in-depth DNA sequencing from the patient's infection and were able to link the prolonged infection to a mutation. In a press release, one author wrote, "This mutation has particular clinical significance because the antibiotics involved, linezolid and daptomycin, are the last line of defense against VRE infection."
On Wednesday, at a meeting of the American Astronomical Society in Grapevine, Texas, an international team of scientists announced that for the first time they've been able to trace a repeating radio signal to a specific distant galaxy. Sriharsh Tendulkar of McGill University and a member of the Discovery team said, "We know that at least one of these fast radio bursts originated in a discrete source within a distant dwarf galaxy located some 3 billion light-years beyond our Milky Way galaxy." And, according to team leader Shami Chatterjee, finding the host galaxy of this FRB in its distance is a big step forward, but we still have much more to do before we fully understand what these things are.
And these young kids gave a veteran a proper send-off, a group of teenagers stepping forward to serve as pallbearers after a former Navy petty officer dies without any family or friends. Jerry Wayne Pino's body lay unclaimed in a Mississippi funeral home for weeks and weeks until one of the workers there decided to do something about it. So she asked her son to gather some boys from Long Beach High School, Mississippi, to help out. Within minutes, 6 boys volunteered to help with the service. Pino was 70 years old. What a group of nice young men out of Mississippi there.